everybody. Randy Patterson here with Boomrosity, and I've got a little bit different interview for you this time. It's, as always tell you, I always shoot for things that are fun, interesting, maybe something a little different, maybe that you haven't heard or thought of before. And this is one of those interviews. If you're from the New York City area, then you already know who Ron Delsener is. He owned Ron Delsener Presents, which was a big, successful concert entity, which was pretty much him and his family, I believe, that was helping him out. But this guy helped carve out what we know as the concert business today. Ultimately, it was bought out by the big guys, but back in the 70s and 80s, it was Ron Delsener Presents himself. And so somebody decided to make a documentary of that film. When I was made aware of the film, I was naturally very interested because not only do I love music, but I love business and the business side of music. So this is right in my lane, man. And so when I reached out to the publicist and asked if Ron might be available, I didn't think he would be, or possibly the director of the film. And that director is named Jake Sumner. And so after that got worked out, I started doing my research. And you never believe what I learned in my research, that Jake Sumner is the son of none other than Sting. Yeah, that's Sting from the Police. We really didn't touch on that. I alluded to it a little bit, but how cool is it to be talking with Sting's son? But Jake is a phenomenal person to talk to. Great director, very prolific in his work. He does documentaries, commercials, all sorts of such things, and very, very successful at it. So I think you're going to find this interview very interesting, very entertaining, and well worth your time to watch and listen to. While you're at it, would you hit like? Would you hit subscribe? Neither one going to cost you anything, of course. And share it with your music-loving friends, and especially those that went to a lot of concerts, and especially those who went to a lot of concerts in New York City. And if you want to find out where this film is coming to, as far as maybe a town where you live or near where you live, go to rondelsenerpresentsfilm.com. And there's a little menu bar up in, I think it's the upper right-hand corner. You click on there and you can find out where this film's going to be at. And you'll want to definitely see it before it gets into streaming and such. You want to see it in the theaters because it's bigger than life. And we, of course, want to support the arts. So without any further ado, here's my first of what I really hope will be many more interviews to come with Jake Sumner. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomrosity. Take care.
Background.
I thought you might.
That's cool.
I stole a few posters. What can I say? So
it looks great.
How you doing, Jake?
I'm doing good. How's it going, Randy?
Busy. It's going great. Where are you clicking in from?
From New York City.
All right. Oh, okay. I was thinking for some reason you were going to be clicking in from the UK or something, but we're in the same time zone. Good deal.
No, I've lived here. I've lived in the States now longer than I ever lived in the UK. So,
okay. Okay. I don't know where I got that from. I thought maybe Ben or Bob had said it, but maybe I just assumed it. But
I mean, I am of the UK. I am an English person. So,
yeah. Yeah, well, your accent kind of made me wonder if you were from East Tennessee, like I am. So,
oh, really? It's funny, isn't it?
No, I'm kidding.
But there is like there's something British about some Southern accents and some of the ways some of the words, a lot of words like reckon.
Yeah, yep. Well,
kind of.
there was a DJ. I grew up in Phoenix, and there was a DJ there. Forget his name. But he passed himself off as British. And my mom, my late mom, she heard him one day and she goes, "There's no way he's a Tennessee boy. I guarantee it." And she was right. But there was something about a Southern accent that lends itself to faking a British accent in some ways if they put enough thought to it, I guess.
There's
So,
like some area in the Carolinas where there it really is. I think it's like an island off the Carolinas. I know that's not the real South. Maybe it is. I don't know. But
but
there's like an island where they sound British.
I'll be darned. That's
Uh,
funny. Well, I'm just on the other side of the mountains from the Carolinas. I'm in the Smoky Mountains way down south to quote another great Brit, you know. So,
Beautiful, beautiful
yep.
area.
So,
Well, nice
well,
to
hey,
connect.
I know you've got a lot going on, but I did want to talk to you about this movie. I absolutely loved it. I didn't really know what to expect when I watched it, but I'm kind of I love music, especially classic rock. That's my generation. I know, you're a younger generation and you've got that connection to rock and roll through family and such, but watching this, man, it hit my my other passion is business. Both of my degrees are in finance. And then watching this thing about Ron, I was like, holy crap, this is cool. So
Oh,
I
thank you.
wanted to talk to you about it. You did a great job helping tell his story. I imagine there was a lot to it, though, trying to get it to film. Won't you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to your first point, yeah, I mean, I am a much younger generation, but I grew up listening to a lot of music my parents would play for us, and grew up on the Beatles, grew up on Elvis. This was the kind
Yeah.
of music that was going on in our house. And so I don't know. And I always sort of looked at it like I was so interested in the kind of history of music and kind of not just the what was going on in the charts, but more looking back and got into record collecting, got into going to live shows, um, and was kind of in it, and would go to a lot of shows as a kid and would be on the road. So I got to meet a lot of people, and I got to meet a lot of people backstage, and Ron Delsener was someone that was kind of a presence in the world of live music at that time.
Hmm.
Um,
How did, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, and just to say, yeah, the other part of like how and why sort of made the film. I mean, I think, you know, in meeting Ron and getting to know Ron over the years, Ron is a very good storyteller and can regale you with a kind of great story of Jimi Hendrix or Aretha Franklin or Cream, Eric Clapton, Ozzy Osbourne, the list. It's unbelievable. He kind of has the story, and they're always kind of interesting, kind of offbeat stories, not often what you would expect, but kind of funny and uh, yeah, they're not the it's often not the kind of like the kind of glory that you expect or like the romance you expect from like a rock and roll tale. They're kind of like more, very casual. Like
Casual.
Eating pizza with Elton John in a hotel room or something, like
Yeah.
just like that's Ron. Yeah, so but his a lot of his stories and the stories of live music and a lot of these shows, I think when they're told together collectively, give you a sense of the history. And I think through his story, I wanted to explore the history of the live music business and how it went from kind of a cottage industry to the globalized corporate industry that it is today.
Yeah, I watching that interview, two things came to my mind that I was aware of. First of all, I interviewed Marshall Chest a few months ago, and they Marshall and Ron could have been like brothers. I mean, the way they act, the way they kind of look, and all of that, but two completely different major cities, right? So there was that, and I was almost wondered if they knew each other. And then the other thing that came to mind was a book that came out, gosh, 15 or so years ago called Ticket Masters. Not Ticket Masters, one word, but Ticket Masters. And it was the history of the concert business. And as I was watching your film, a lot of that book came back into my memory about how things evolved, how things changed. A lot of things that people don't realize when they're just a casual concert goer. all they don't realize how that sausage is made backstage, you know.
I
What
like that. It's a way of putting it.
what was your biggest surprises that you learned? I mean, like I said, you grew up in this, so you had probably better insight or at least some expectation that most of us wouldn't, but you still had to be surprised by some of what you learned in working on this.
Well, I think what was initially interesting to me about it was that, and I could be wrong, or some listener might say, "Hey, you're full of shit. There's plenty on live music." But I always felt like the record business gets much more of the shine and much more of the in terms of the history of contemporary music and gets talked
Mhm.
about a lot more. Um, guys like Ahmet Ertegun and Clive Davis,
Yeah.
and much more of the sort of, how that industry evolved and the selling of records rather than the sort of live music thing. And I think when it comes to live music history, people often, Bill Graham. They know the name Bill Graham. But there were a handful of other guys too. And really, you had Bill Graham on the West Coast, and you had Ron Delsener really on the East Coast, and you had
Mhm.
lots of other guys who were very important too in various territories. But I thought it would be cool to shed light on how a lot of these great shows and rock and roll moments came about, and how it went from this pretty small cottage industry that was run by Ron and a handful of people in a small office, how they operated and how they put on every show in New York for a period, how Ron Delsener Presents put on, any act of any note because they had the relationships with all the venues. You had to go
Mhm.
through Ron. So I mean, and just think about that in the kind of like golden era of like music from the late 60s to the 80s, like they were doing everything. So I just thought this is an interesting history and I think would be a cool way to explore. And he's a good vehicle to do that with.
Yeah. Well, he certainly, was also innovative, Central Park shows and things like that. One thing I was wondering, I don't recall that it was in your film, but I was watching a Zeppelin documentary, not the new one, but one of the older ones, more cheaply made. But they were showing the scene from The Song Remains the Same where Peter Grant's kind of going nose to nose with somebody there at Madison Square Gardens. It wasn't Ron. But
Could have been.
it could have been. I don't. That would have been a. That would
But
have been.
I think I know the scene you're talking about though.
Yeah, where they're talking about the missing money and all this
I think
other stuff.
is that in Stairway to Heaven? Is it in the film?
No, it's called Song Remains the Same. That's what it was.
That's what I mean. Somewhere is the
Yeah,
same.
yeah.
Sorry.
And
Excuse me. That's
Peter
right.
Grant, before he lost all of his weight, man, he's standing down talking to this guy, and the promoter was just giving as good as he was taking there. But I don't think it was Ron, and if it was,
No,
they
no, it
didn't mention
wasn't.
his name.
Definitely wasn't.
But there, I mean, I interviewed, oh God, Danny, oh shoot, he did all the concerts in Phoenix, and he put out a book. But he said something that I didn't realize, and I'm sure Ron couldn't have a million stories about this about anymore when you're signing up these acts for concerts. A lot of times it's a year in advance,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
got to front all the money.
Oh
That's a
well,
ton of money.
that's for sure, and that's kind of the most interesting aspect to me of it is it was all Ron's money, and he was self-made. It wasn't like
Right.
it was given a bunch of money and then kind of put on shows. He made money by doing the shows and sort of working his way up, but then was fronting all the money. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's real gambling, you know.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be a certain type of person
A
to hang.
masochist.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, to put it bluntly, I think that's correct. And I think you have to kind of be able to do that night in, night out for years. I mean, I think there's an addiction to that, you know? Um,
It's
but yeah,
funny you put it that way because at the end of the movie or the documentary, there he is at the kitchen table again, trying to get it all going again. And it's like, dude, just enjoy life, please. You know?
well, I think what's not spoken in the film, but I think is obvious if you watch it, is that is how Ron enjoys life, you know? I think that's what Ron lives for, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's putting on shows and bringing music to people. Um, so it's, you know, whether it's working out or not, if he's booking the acts or not, it doesn't matter. It's the hustle and it's, you know, working
The
the
thrill of the
phones.
deal.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
thrill of the deal. He loves it.
Now, I read in the one sheet about the movie that you were with him, you were down in his basement going through
Oh yeah.
stuff to tell me about that because man, there had to be a lot that didn't make the documentary. I mean, what was your decision making process to get into it? Did he tell you what he wanted or were you calling shots? Was it more collaborative? How did that
No,
all
it
work?
wasn't collaborative. I was calling the shots. I don't make collaborative documentaries with the subjects.
Good. Much more objective that way.
Yeah, yeah. No. I don't think that's a good way of I always say, you know, like I'm not making a birthday video. It can't be that, you know.
That's a
Can't,
that's a
can't it
good
just
way of
can't
putting it.
it can't be that, you know? Like
Right.
it I understand why certain people would want that for themselves, but that's not what we're doing here. So I think you got to start off when you start a project, you have to start off with that idea. Like we're not making a birthday video, like, you know, we're making a film about a human being and there's all kinds of things and touch points and ups and downs that we need to cover. So but um yeah, I mean, in terms of his basement, are you referencing kind of the archival or
Yeah,
what we
yeah, where he
include?
had everything stored.
Yeah, well, we found most of the archival in the film. The film, at least, and all the photography for the most part was stuff that we found in his basement. I mean, you know,
Wow.
granted, we would get permissions and we'd get a better copy or whatever it was, but I kind of like the idea of it being all stuff that we kind of came from that Aladdin's cave of stuff that is his basement, which is a
Mhm.
wild place, which is like not like you know turned up there during kind of mid-COVID and there's no order to it. It's just you go down there and it's like it's everything and anything. It's just a lot. It's lots of like old junk from over the years, and then it's you know, you'll find like a Babe Ruth signed baseball, or you'll find like yeah, like or you'll find just incredible photos of like him and just kind of amazing legends like the Allman Brothers, or you know, him and Patti Smith, or like you know him and Bob Marley, and like you know it's amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Every backstage pass, every ticket, every contract, he kept everything. Um, so
Wow.
you know, for me it was you know a dream. Actually, that part was great. I spent a long time in his basement just digitizing stuff with my colleague Kate Greenberg, who was very helpful too. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, and we had to deal with Ron at the same time, who was the whole time like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing with my stuff? You know, he
We're making your birthday party video, Ron. Leave.
Yeah, I think you know to Ron their treasures, you know. So I think
Yeah.
which they are, you know, like and it's stuff he can't let go of. So he's very protective of it. So
Yeah.
um, which I get, and so I think we had to earn some trust there with in terms of you don't just go in there and start digitizing. We kind of worked our way into that with him, and a lot of meals, a lot of time just hanging out, listening to music, or just talking, no camera, just getting, you know, because I knew Ron, you know, I've known Ron in a kind of peripheral way,
Right.
you know, since I was a young kid, but you know, I didn't really know Ron, you know, I think that's a different thing. So, you know, just sitting down and talking and understanding more before any kind of recording, it was important.
Did from a earning that trust, would you say that was the hardest part of making this documentary, or was there something else that you found a bit problematic getting it done, like getting permission to use certain images or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's tough. That stuff is hard. Licensing, music licensing, um, for sure. Clearances, very hard. And music especially now, it's so expensive. And so
Yeah.
we were very blessed to have one of the world's great music supervisors, Randy Poster, who does much bigger films than this, like all of Wes Anderson's films, those amazing soundtracks. Randy puts all those together. And I emailed him. I know his sister Meryl for many years, but I didn't know Randy, but I I just emailed him cold and said, "Hey, I know your sister Meryl. I'm doing this documentary on Ron Delsener. Is there any way you'd take a meeting with me?" And he wrote back, I think 10 minutes later in capital letters, "Ron Delsener Presents!" Exclamation point. Like, I grew up in New York City. I was at all those shows, like resounding yes. And that was a huge
Nice.
help. And that he really helped us secure a lot of that music. You need, you know, unfortunately, it is the way it is with that stuff. You need to have ins with these labels and someone who knows how to make the deals work because it's very complicated. And yeah, we have a phenomenal sort of soundtrack in the film.
Yeah.
But no, actually, the most complicated stuff thing to deal with was Ron. Definitely. I mean, he's very
In what way?
mercurial. He's just a very mercurial guy. I mean, he's a lot of fun, funny, but he's also in his late 80s, and he could be a handful. And also there are days where he just didn't want to do it. And so, you gotta roll with the punches and kind of figure out how to get it done. But I think to me, like the best characters are people like that.
Yeah.
You know,
They
it's it,
they
if
they go ahead. Go ahead.
well, if it was that, I think the good ones, the good characters are not the easy ones. You
Yeah.
know, it's just the way it is. It's just the way part of what makes them interesting.
You had some pretty interesting people contributing to this on camera. I mean, you had some names in there. How was that pretty because of him and all that? I mean, was that easy to secure or did you
That
have to
was
cajole a
that,
little bit?
no, that was actually one of the easier things because
Ah,
I think there was a lot of most of those acts Ron, you know, broke them in New York, gave
yeah,
them their first gigs, I mean, Billy for sure, Bon Jovi, Kiss, the Kiss guys. I mean, Patti Smith, I think, to a degree. I mean, granted, these guys are all playing in, New York clubs, but to make it to the next level, you had to kind of work with Ron. And
yeah,
Ron took a chance with all of these acts. So I think there is a debt of gratitude that they've felt toward him. And in a couple of cases, the actual artists messaged me about being in it. Like I didn't even know, they were like, I heard there's a Ron Delsener film. I'd love to participate. So that was,
oh,
um,
fun.
yeah, because I think that he's also someone that, still will show up to the shows when people are in town and has held on to those relationships and will always turn up. And he's one of these people that he'll just always be there. He's always there. He's just kind of
Yeah,
hanging around. Um, but I think in that business, that's an important thing.
yeah,
And he's been able to sustain that. Probably not now to the extent when we were making the film a few years ago now. Ron was out at shows, every night, 3 or 4 shows, making calls on it, hitting the Beacon Theater, Madison Square Garden, Webster Hall, Irving Plaza, wherever. Like, um, now I think he's slowed down. I don't think he can sustain that kind of schedule, and he is, quote unquote, retired.
however he defines it, right? So,
Yeah. But yeah, but I think someone like Ron can never really retire.
yeah.
You know, I think I think it's just in him that, you know, he wants to put shows on, and I think it's what makes him happy. So I don't I think it's yeah, it's small stuff, or it's whatever. It's a gig. It's, you know, a gig every couple months, or some sort of concert or gathering. But it's the fact that he's still doing it and he's nearly 90 years old is credit to him, and it's what brings him joy.
Does he still, even though it's small time stuff that he's doing, do you sense that he still commands the level of respect that he did when he was at his height, or do people just kind of go, yeah, Ryan, whatever, and then kind of ignore him? I hope it's not that. I hope he
No,
still
no,
commands the respect.
he does, and I think. I mean, it's funny because a lot of people don't know who Ron is, you know, like in New York, there's a generation of people when you say Ron Delsener Presents that light up and like, oh yeah, Ron Delsener Presents. Like I went to all that shows, and you know, then there's others who were around at the same time who will say who, you know, but you know, but you know, definitely in that world he does command a lot of respect and does you know um he's just been around, you know, and he's so much a part of the history of it, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think people in that industry know that.
What's been the response so far of those who have seen the film? I know I love it, but I'm kind of a weird business geek. I could see myself being a Ron if my circumstances had been different growing up. But so I get off on people like that, watching them and learning their stories. But what are you hearing from others that are a little more normal than I am that watch the movie, and
Well,
what's the feedback?
they're complimentary to me about it, but you never know, you know. Yeah, they might just be saying that. I'm not sure. And
Hmm.
I think generally, yeah, it's I think a pretty good response to it. It's yeah, we certainly worked hard on it.
It shows.
And yeah, it's like one of these things where it's definitely an ambitious film, I think, in terms of like the scope and in terms of like what we set out to do. And it took a long time. So I think everyone who sees it can kind of appreciate that. Whether you're or not you like Ron, or you care about the subject, or whatever. But I think the response has been good. I think it's been well received. I think it's a fun film.
I do
I
too.
think if you like music and you're interested in the history of music, then I think, you know, check it out.
What do you hope people take away from the film when they finish watching it?
Well, I think the concert business is such a different industry now,
Yeah.
and it's changed so much. And my aim wasn't to I kind of wanted to create a picture of what it was like then, and sort of maybe how it changed and how those changes happened through
Yeah.
his story, and sort of seeing the various stages of it. So I think, and a lot of people, you know, a lot of big music fans know this history, but a lot of people don't. So I kind of wanted to create yeah, through his story, a bit of a history, you know, not a history lesson, a fun history lesson. I don't know, a musical one that sort of takes you on a journey.
Yeah.
So I hope people sort of understand a little bit more about the live music business and about bringing music to people. And but then also I think it tells a personal story that's about kind of sticking with it, you know, um,
Hmm.
the art of the hustle, you know, never never stopping, like being
Yeah.
relentless,
Yeah.
uh, you know, and what that drive is. So I don't know. I like that I wanted it to be something that worked on kind of two levels.
Do you plan on having it released on DVD once it makes the theatrical run?
I mean, I don't even know if they make DVDs anymore. I'm not
Oh
sure.
yeah, I get them in the mail from publicists all
I
the
do.
time, man.
I do too. I still have my DVD player. I love my Blu-rays, but yeah, it's definitely not like a format that sadly, it's like not how people are seeing films anymore. I'd like to do a
Yeah,
nice DVD. I'd like to do a nice DVD that comes in like nice packaging, almost like a record,
yeah,
like
yeah.
with some nice artwork and maybe the a score. The Money Mark of the Beastie Boys was our composer, who was a legend, great guy. And that was one of the great joys for me of making this film was to work with him on the score. But yeah, I mean, I dream of a packaged thing where the film, the soundtrack, and some nice artwork and photography, kind of like a record. Whether or not that will happen, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think the aim after it's the theatrical run is uh, it will run on streaming, and we'll know more about where in the coming weeks, months.
Well, cool. What's next for you project wise? Because I love this. I hope you do some more documentaries, man. You did a great job on it.
Thank you. Well, that's what I do. I do documentaries. I'm doing a documentary on the contemporary artist Cause, who's a pop artist of our times.
Hmm.
Um, and it's a kind of look at his career and kind of the changing face of contemporary art. Pretty different type of thing. And I've been working on that for kind of around a similar period. It's just taken longer. Um, but that we should have done by next year. And yeah, I got some I got some various things, other things I'm trying to get going, and the I love music docs, my favorite. So that's really where my that's really where my heart is in music documentaries and music stories. So there's a couple of irons in the fire that I'm trying to get going, but I won't jinx it.
Well, well, I don't want to either, but I will say that when you have those, Jake, please keep me in mind. I know I'm not Rolling Stone magazine, but I do have a fairly decent global following. I would love to help get the word out on it, and 'cause it's right in my lane, especially the classic rock into the 80s is where my strengths are, but I'll cover anything that I feel like my generation, the baby boomer generation, will be interested in. So I would love to, anything you've got going on down the road, let's talk again. It would be a lot of fun to cover that with you. So
I like the name of your podcast, Boomerosity.
I made that name up. When I started this thing 16 and a half years ago, or just over 16 years ago, I was in Dallas and I was trying to come up with a name that would project baby boomers, but in North Texas, where I was living at the time in the Dallas area, there was this college rivalry that had gone on for decades between I'm not a sports fan, but one of the Texas universities and the University of Oklahoma. And the Oklahoma team was called the Sooners, and their song was Boomer Sooner. So every website name I went to try to get, it was taken up with some of those fool sports fans that was calling it Boomer something. And so one day I saw this ad for the famous travel agency, Travelocity. I don't know why, Jake, but it just hit me. I was like, what the heck does osity mean? And it took me a while to dig into the internet to find out. And osity means the essence of. So for them, it was the essence of travel. For me, I wanted the essence of being a baby boomer. So there it
Like
was. And I
I
had a
tried.
lot of people trying to cancel me out on there and tell me change the name because people miss that middle O. And I said, nah, I want to keep it. So now people are catching it, and it's very unique. Some people think it's silly, but I don't care.
I like it.
So
Boomers. What's the
yeah,
best thing about being a boomer?
we had all the great music, man. Of
That's
course.
right. That's right. All my favorite music for
Yeah, and,
sure.
and great concert promoters too. So
Great movies. Yeah, you
yep,
guys had it good. Still have
yep.
it good.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Well, Jake, thanks for carving out the time. I know you were extremely busy, and but I sure appreciate it, and I'll send the links out when this post. I'll get with Bob and Ben as to when they want this to hang up out there, and
Is
like I
this
said, we
is this straight to
go ahead.
tape or are you like editing this? What are you doing?
Oh,
Or are
I'll
we
edit it. I'll edit out my mug a lot while you're talking, and
Oh, it's camera.
yeah, yeah. That's I've
Okay.
got it all. I've got it all. It's through Zoom, so.
Yeah.
I record it that way onto my computer and then I edit it. Very low tech, relatively speaking, compared to what you're used to. I just am iMovie and
Yeah.
Zoom and maybe GarageBand to tweak the sound or whatever. But
Well,
I've had to learn it.
nice, man. Well, sorry we have to reschedule this a couple times and
Oh,
thanks for jumping on.
hey man,
Uh,
it's been worth the wait, believe me. And let's do this again, okay?
for sure. Thank you
All
so
right, take
much.
care, Jake.
Cheers,
All right,
Randy.
take care. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.